Huh? That's apart from the fact that a lot of our houses are owned by us and are now formal. 77% or something is formal houses. They are. Whites are overrepresented there. 9% has become 17% in rooms. Sure, white people. There you go. But overall, why didn't you not, if you want to be a successful government, why wouldn't you go out and say, hey, we've done quite well. We used to have less rooms than people. Do you know that? Yeah. Go and look at the 96 census. Go and look at the well, then it was called the October household surveys. Right? At one stage, we used to have 2 people to a room. And 1 or 2 of our household surveys show that we've got nearly the other way around. But this shows that we've got 59 point something million rooms and 51.8 million people. But this is just primary residence in the sun. That's where you're living now. And we know from the General Household Survey that a lot of South Africans have a secondary residence. Yes. Nearly 1/3 of Africans have a second home. It might be in the homelands, in the so-called homelands, if I can put it that way, and might not be used that much, true, and it's not always a holiday destination. It's also true. But nonetheless, those are things. Then home ownership. This doesn't come from this survey, also an older slide. We've now come down a bit, I agree, but let's have a look. We're at a level where Norway and Ireland are. Ireland's definitely come down now quite tremendously. We've also come down. I'm not sure where Norway is. But look there, we're above Germany, Denmark, Netherlands, France, all that type of stuff. And these numbers don't change that much. They might come down a few percentage points and so on. But in a worldwide downturn, everybody's going to have a downturn, you know? So let's put it this way. Why don't we say this? South Africans are asset rich. We have something. We've built so many houses. Yes, the quality, we can argue about those rooms. The quality of the rooms, the quality of the education, or whatever the case may be. We can argue about that. Right? But here's something that we should be proud of. But instead, we take it the other way around, which makes me wonder, it really, really makes me wonder, is why you're blurting this out. Is the only reason that you're in power is because of poverty and inequality, and you therefore want to keep poverty and inequality, because that's the only way that you can stay? Or do you say, but wait a minute, I must address the successful and start talking about the successes? Because otherwise you've got a problem. Where's the leadership when you've got a mine that's got a wildcat strike? And believe me, in South Africa, only 2.5 out of every 10 adults are in the formal sector. And when you're in a mine, you're in the formal sector. Those are the people that earn money. 4 out of 10 adults work. There's a difference between the formal sector and the informal, and domestic workers, I'm using outside of agriculture, I must say, and also employers, okay? So you've got that. What the census also showed on the bad side is that we've got 8.8 million people that are unemployed. So that's the biggest issue I would like to address, certainly. And the only way I can address it is by being honest with people and saying to them, in South Africa, if you earn 10,000 odd a month, whether it's 9 or 11, let's not argue about that, that's a relatively good amount. And yes, you may be working hard, and you may be unhappy, but we have to find a way to bring more people into the working place, which we can't do by having too expensive salaries. But that's a different issue. 8.3 million black African families stay in a brick or a concrete. That's also from the, so out of 11.2 million, that's the total concrete and brick thing. So that gives you an idea as to the real numbers out there. So this isn't just informal squatter camps and so on. I told you about the 4.9 million black families who own their own home fully, while only 502,000 white families do. 882, I was wrong just now, 1,000 black South Africans are paying off their homes through banks. 518,000 white families are. That also says to you that the suburbs are changing, doesn't it? So when you refer to the white suburbs, is it really still a white suburb? Do me a favor, ask yourself this question. I'm working hard, I'm studying, I want to be something. Am I right? That's what you're here for. You want to learn. Why do you want to learn? You want to be able to add more value, all right, to society, but in that form, you'd also then expect a greater reward. Am I right? And what's that going to do? Do you then want to buy an RDP house? No. You want to buy a nice house. And you have every right. You have the right to be rich. Can I say that again? You have the right to be rich. You have the right to get out of fucking poverty. Okay? Don't let anybody kid you about that. That's very true. You have that right. And you must take that right. Doesn't matter about the color of your skin. That's a right for everyone. All right, so here people are changing South Africa. This is a huge change for South Africa. And again, I'm sorry that the Indians and coloreds aren't counted here, but this is a huge change, which is happening right now. A little thought, some of the other information that we got, and I mix it up with some, but 13.2 million people work. Okay? 22.5 million people, according to the FinScope survey, surveying the banks and people, have a bank account. That's huge. Okay, they're talking people, not companies. It's just a little bit of a disconnect in my mind that I can't. And 19.6 million people have a credit record. Yes, I can understand some pensioners, some private pensions, but they about half the money that they get, and also, generally speaking, they very few. There's about 1.5 to 2 million of them. But does that mean that some of the social welfare checks are going into credit? Well, there's some evidence that some people say they buy food, but the other evidence is, more so than food, 90% of households today have a cellular phone. Do you know that we were one of the first countries in the world, one of the first 10 countries in the world, to have more cell phones than people? Okay? Yeah. That was in the early 2000s already. Now think yourself that. We're the only emerging market country, or the first emerging market country to do that. There must be some sort of wealth, and there must be some sort of other little goodies that we have. TVs, 80% of our households have TVs. But everybody claims poverty. 30% of our households have a car. One of the highest numbers in the emerging market world. Huh? Indians don't even reach 5% of their households having a car. I don't know what the exact number is, but I can tell you that. Because in India, 10% of households on their thing had electricity. We have 90% with electricity. So I'm not saying we should compare to India only, but I think we must just balance our thoughts when we compare ourselves to the Dallas of America that you see on television, because that ain't the real world either. I'm nearly finished. I think there are good statistics in the census. I can tell you I have a lot of respect of a lot of people at Stats SA. I have a lot of respect for a lot of people in government. But I just wonder why, when you've got good statistics and good news to sell, your statistical office prefers to point out inequalities and poverty and orphans, and then backtracks on the orphans and says, whoops, the census wasn't meant to look for orphans when you ask a question about it. I just wonder why you don't say these are the things. Yes, they did say about TVs and cell phones and stuff, but the big picture of the houses, the general household survey, it comes out every year. It's been telling us this story for a long time. When you go to business people, they don't even know how many houses there are fully owned in South Africa. And if we think about it, how we could leverage off those houses, how we could do things and everything. And then I ask, why are some statistics by race not being made available, i.e. those orphan statistics and so on. So why are the bad statistics always pronounced? So that's the question. I think the best thing I want to say is we're still an asset-rich country, probably income poor for a lot of people, but we've got to look at what makes the successes, and we've got to learn from those successes, because we want to be successful. Otherwise, you know, why are we sitting here? Thank you.
think Mike will take a few questions. I just want to tell you the story. I was a couple of years ago at the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor, and they had set me up to talk to a whole lot of young professors there. There's a young African-American professor, and she said to me, and I was saying to her, why is it in your country that the people I know and meet with and talk to are doing, as African-Americans, doing so exceptionally well, and so on and so forth. And we were talking about that. And then she said something that I'll never forget. She says, you know, sometimes I'm afraid to tell my own people I'm doing well. And I thought to myself, there's something there about perpetual victimhood. That we really, I spoke about that, by the way, this morning in the same complex, that we really, and by the way, this is a truly non-racial sport. This victimhood story.
Sure.
Anyway, Mike, thank you. That was any questions for us? Yes, sir.
Business owners, entrepreneurs, that 50,000 that disappeared. You talk about we sell the bad, but doesn't it give a reason for government to be a bigger player in the economy? I mean, it seems that we make it so difficult for businesses to start that we, on the one side, we say, you know, SMEs are going to save us, but we make it difficult. I think 35 days to start up just to get through the red tape. And yet, those are the biggest employers in the world, these small businesses, from 1 to 5. So is bad statistics not also a good thing to say, but government need to intervene more and more and more? Because the real facts tells a different story. We need those small businesses.
I would turn it around. I would say, why do I want government to intervene? You know what? A lot of times you talk to guys and they'll say, oh, look at the Americans. They intervened in their economy. But they intervened differently. They intervened to help those businesses through a bad time. Right? We're intervening and saying, wait a minute, we want to prop up this government-owned business, but in the process, we might be taking out some private businesses, i.e. one-time, okay? Yeah. Then we look at the fees. Do you think, first of all, a monopoly is a monopoly. Whether it's private sector or public sector, it's a problem, okay? So if you've got a monopoly at the airports, have a look at how their prices are going. Your electricity, wherever you buy from is a monopoly. It's either your local council or from Eskom, okay? And those prices are rising tremendously. And Eskom announced, well, 38 billion profit. You know, they can buy these things quite a lot, or pay these stations off quite quicker than they said. And remember, they wanted 45% a year last time round. And it's a big fight, but that's another thing. I think what I would say on the red tape issue, there was a small business project, if I remember, it's called FBP now. They want less red tape. And I think you can't teach entrepreneurship, but what you can teach people is an attitude. And I'll tell you what I mean with attitude. There's a country in Africa called Ghana. They're much poorer than we are. They spend the same as a percentage of GDP on education that we do. And although they're a tenth of our income, their kids outperformed our kids with 20 basis points, if you want to put it. Where we scored 22% in comprehension and language, or that PISA test, they scored 42. Where on the TIMSS test we scored 20, they scored 40. Right? So I think if you look at Ghana and you say to yourself, oh, that's what's happening there. If you look at the Southern African stuff, many of the Southern African countries have beaten us at education. A lot of other countries in Africa, a lot, have beaten us. So with less money, you know, and we complain, we think it's a money problem. I think what we've got to start seeing is real leadership on many issues. And part of that leadership is going to be to say, well, if you're doing an MBA and you're looking for another job, that's maybe half a lost cause. Because if you're doing an MBA, you should be looking at starting your own company or looking for your own opportunity. That's maybe it. By the way, graduates are much more likely to be employers.
It's only true for the UFS. I saw another question. Yes,
Mr. Mike, in respect of the findings, how can we advise the government to kind of implement their findings of census regarding education? Because I think to weather the storm of what we are currently inheriting is through education. So how can we use the findings to attract more quality educators into the profession so that the whole inequalities in the economy can be defeated?
Well, I think government is trying to spend a lot on education. It's just not effective. I think what we have to do as a country is have a way of talking to our government and have a way, and not just at the electioneering stage, but taking it further in a community sense or in whatever sense. And it's going to depend a lot on you guys as well. I haven't got the magic wand. I haven't got all the answers, but what you're going to have to do, and some of us have to do, is say we need better education. We need better outcomes for our children, okay, and our brothers and our sisters, because that's the real part that makes it. And in fact, there's a problem now, because in many countries, education has become so good that The Economist did an article is that these guys that do a PhD and then you become like somebody's sidekick to help them with research. You have to do this now, you know, not only just for 5 years and then become a professor or something. In some countries, these guys are doing it for 25, 30 years. So many countries already have reached a point of education where people just perpetually, you know, don't get that far ahead anymore and so on. Whereas by us, because the differences are so vast, and we don't have, you know, like 40 or 50% of the population with a master's degree or whatever the case may be, we've still got a room to grow that. So that's an opportunity for you guys to see in the first place. So you're going to go through a period where you're going to see rapid increases in your own salaries if you make a tertiary education. That's what I think, okay, in the majority of cases. The other thing that I think is that I think there's a new sense of leadership. I've met a lot of people in this country, across all groups, across everywhere, and I agree with you that whinging and victimhood is across all races. You just need to go to a white braai. But the point of the matter is, okay, the point of the matter is this, it's simple. Is you first got to look after yourself before you can look after somebody else. And maybe the thing is, if you just put it in your mind, that you're going to work for somebody else maybe to start off, but you're going to look for opportunity. And you put that into your mind, and you rethink opportunities the whole time. And one day you'll see an opportunity. It'll stare you down the face. It'll make you scared. Okay? Because that's what it does. Right? And then you may just have the courage to take it. And you may make it. You may not, but you may make it. And under those circumstances, you may be able to help a lot more people. And typically the people that you're going to help over time are going to be people in your circle. Might not be directly your wife or someone, you know, but it might be, oh, you know, Pete there, and he can help you get this car garage thing going because he's got a, you know, this little thing, and he can come on board. And that's how I think very often things start. So the other thing I also want to say is, being a small business person myself, I only now realize how it sometimes starts. And, you know, when government talks to business, they actually, even if you've got a degree, they're talking over your head. They think that you have this research capacity and you have a legal department and a human resource department to look after your employees and everything like that. In the meantime, you're living by the skin of your teeth. Okay, and you're just praying that the guy